Hey guys, Jim Grant here for Ammoland TV. Now we're finally nearing the end of the pandemic and the panic buying. We're finally seeing prices begin to fall, provided we don't have another forced mandated lockdown by Delta, Omega, Zeta, Zulu, whatever the hell they're going to call the next variant of COVID. But we're seeing those prices begin to come down, and it got me thinking about guys that kind of just loaded up on magazines at the height of the pandemic, or even just before. And we've all had this discussion before with our loved ones, provided you're not like a billionaire, is you get home with a bag full of something or a box full of something, or you get something from Amazon or whatever, and your wife goes, "What did you buy?" And you go, "Magazines." She goes, "Don't you have like 1,000,000 magazines? What do you need more mags for?" And you go, Okay, so personally, I have a sort of metric I've always used for how many magazines I need for a specific gun, but there are some exceptions to the rule and whatnot. So I'm gonna give you my kind of steadfast rules for it. And by rules, I don't mean like legislation. I don't think that anybody should be restricted. If you can afford and have enough space for 1,000,000 magazines in your closet, dude, go for it, get it. I mean, hell, magazines are like ammunition, and good luck's in money. You can never have too much, right? But in general, if you wanna have the bare minimum, my kind of soft rule is 3. And you're thinking, 3? That doesn't sound like a lot of magazines. And you're not wrong, that's not. But that 3 only applies to like an AR or an AK. Let me give you an example. And not in every single example. So this is a Romanian surplus 30 round steel magazine. It's made from stamped steel. There's some welding, and it's robust, holds 30 rounds. I bought this in 2004 or 5, I don't recall, for $9. These same magazines now demand $40, $30, $40 online, sometimes $20 if they're in kind of beat up condition. And this is one of those magazines that I would say you want a minimum of 3. And my soft rule for that is 3 is kind of applicable to anything that holds more than like 15 rounds. If you hold fewer than 15 rounds, and especially if it's a home defense or a self-defense weapon like a concealed carry handgun, I would say 5. 5 would be your minimum. And you're thinking, all right, where are these numbers coming from? Fair enough. So for a handgun, especially one for concealed carry, you should presumably try to be proficient with it before you go and strap it to yourself, right? So my rule has always been, for a concealed carry gun, I want 5 mags so that when I'm at the range, I can just, I don't have to worry about, well, let me sit there and have a bunch of downtime at the range. No. What you want to do is load the mags before you get to the range, obviously, and spend as much time on the trigger, on target, as humanly possible. Because unless you're like me and a couple other guys out there that live on a farm, your gun range is not close to where you live. And so you'll often have to go and drive to wherever to go shoot. And that wastes 30, 40 minutes, maybe an hour, maybe an hour and a half. And that's both ways. So you're wasting 3 or 4 hours every time you have to go to the range. Do you really want to take what precious time you have available and spend it loading magazines? I mean, yes, sure, it can suck with certain brands that are notoriously high priced for their magazines. I'm looking at you, H&K, SIG. They make great magazines, don't get me wrong, but they were never designed for someone to just kind of like hoard a ton of them, all right? But I have some other exceptions. So this is my Parabellum 08, more commonly known as a Luger. It's a 1942. Well, with a 36 frame, it's a Franken Luger, and it holds a scant 9 rounds, right? And with a gun like this, I mean, I would even say you have to kind of treat it like a quote-unquote crime of opportunity. I wouldn't say go out there and buy 25 mags for your Luger, right? You can if you really want, but they're extremely expensive for what they are. But this is one of those things where if you're at a gun show and you see one for cheap and it's made by a reputable manufacturer, get it. Why would you not? It's one of those things that presumably within our lifetime they will stop making more of. So that's one exception to the rule. The other exception I have would be collectible stuff. So this is a Bakelite AK-74 mag. This is an East German example. And I bought this in about, I think, 04 or 05, I can't recall. And I paid $14 for it. And if you know what these things cost now, that hurts you to hear. They can be 40 and 50 bucks. The variants that are in 7.6239 as opposed to 5.45 by 39, even more so. And so this is another kind of mag that, when it comes to surplus, that's my other big exception. Buy as much as you can afford. Ask guys that owned an FAL back in the day with the South African battle packs and whatnot, FAL mags were like $9. And FAL mags now, if you can find them, are like $40. And yeah, inflation, but thank God inflation's not quite that bad. Similarly, if you see, let's say some new ex-Soviet country comes in and they're just churning out or selling surplus AK magazines and they're less than $20 and they're steel, dude, buy as many as your wife won't murder you for buying. That's kind of a rule of thumb. Yes, you can kind of go ask for forgiveness as opposed to permission, but operate within your budgetary restraints, right? Don't go nuts. But have a little stash of money sitting around that in case you see like a smoking deal that you know you're gonna kick yourself later for not buying, gobble it up. Another good example I had was I've got an MPX, a SIG MPX, and the magazines for the MPX are not cheap. In this example right here, this is a 30 round. It's made by Lancer, and I paid for the first two of these that I bought. I paid $59, right? They were not cheap mags, but big but, looking around online or whatnot, every now and then they'll have weird blowout sales, especially after a panic when people kind of just buy, and eventually the market hits saturation and these resellers can't move their product. So when that happens, I can't remember if it's Rockefeller or JP Morgan, but one of the two said that the time to buy is when there's blood in the streets. And yeah, it sounds horrible, and it is, but it's a valid piece of information. So, for example, during the downtime of Trump's administration early on, these were available on a couple of websites in 3-packs with the cells, magazine cells, the carriers, for $19 a pop. So I bought 9 of them because as opposed to paying $60, the thing is, for the majority of anything firearm related, with the exception of the AR-15, things don't tend to get cheaper as time goes on. And if you're saying, what do you mean the exception of the AR-15? Well, for those of you a little too young to remember, before the mass proliferation of the AR-15 becoming America's favorite black rifle, trademark, those things, I bought my first Bushmaster for, I want to say $1,000 in 2003. And it was an H-bar, but it was a band compliant model. The muzzle was not threaded, fixed stock. It was an A2 style but with a heavy barrel. And that same gun today from any number of manufacturers could be got for $600-700. And when that's taken in conjunction with inflation, you see that those guns in general became a lot cheaper. But they are the exception, definitely not the rule. And when it comes to like surplus, or if let's say it's a boutique company, if you've come across a company like Hudson with their H9, say you love the gun, you get it, you start shooting it, and you're like, this is the best gun I've ever shot in my entire life. I can't imagine another day without it, right? In those instances, buy as many mags as you can afford. Spare parts as well, at least commonly broken spare parts. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily go and buy like 7 barrels because you'll probably die before you need them all. But if you want to buy, I don't know, 6-7 magazines for a gun like that, or even like a dozen, so you never have to buy them again because you're afraid the company doesn't have the permanence of more established companies like SIG, Colt, H&K. Well, don't use Colt, but you get my point. There are exceptions to the rule, but in general, I'm going to say if you're trying to go for a soft rule to abide by, 5 mags. It depends on the usage. And obviously a precision bolt gun kind of is the exception to all this because you're never going to be like quick changing mags and shooting at 1,000 yards. And I guess unless you're like an actual god, I'm not. But even for that, I would say 2, just in case the first one breaks. 3. Magazines are disposable objects. We don't really treat them that way in America, but that's what they were at least initially intended to be. And as such, you should rely on, or at least expect them to eventually fail on you. And in that instance, it's better to have backups on hand as opposed to having to scrounge them when they've doubled, quadrupled, or whatever in price somewhere down the line. Thanks, guys. For Ammoland TV, I'm Jim Grant. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and of course, I will catch you guys on the flip side.